I played the demo for the new Atlus game, Refantazio. It just came out. The reviews are glowing, and I'm here to tell you that if you are curious about the game, there is a free demo, and the demo, I'm not going to lie, is very tempting. So, first of all, I was not super keeping up with this game, you know? Like, it's a JRPG. I will have a lot of time to play it. It's a big game. I'll have plenty of time. I don't feel a ton of pressure. But I was like, hey, I heard good things about the demo, how it was very beefy, and good things about the gameplay. So I can report back from what I played of the demo, which covers the prologue of the game. Damn. That was a good-ass demo. That nearly sold me on the game. That just, I'm on the edge. I'm on the edge, honestly. I wasn't planning on buying a brand new game anytime soon, but, oh man. So let's break down Refantazio. Okay, so it's fantasy Persona. All right, wrap it up. We're done here. Now, but for real, is it fantasy Persona? Yeah, kind of. I guess I can talk about the gameplay first because the plot is kind of a second. So I'll separate them out. Because the gameplay was what... Okay, at the start of the game, it's very simple. In fact, because it's an Atlus game, there is next to zero gameplay of like combat. There's like walking around, I guess. It's all just world setup stuff and plot stuff. It's a lot of cutscenes at the start. You get into the combat, and it's really simple. There's nothing that special. There's a couple cool ideas. I don't know how many... Okay, I didn't play SMT5, so I don't know if this is brand new. Essentially, what you'll do is you'll go into a field area. So the overworld is like a map with different points that you can travel to. And then once you get there, you'll walk around in what they call a field. Sometimes it's a dungeon. And that's where your character and your party is running around. And it's a very traditional Atlus style where you've got enemies on the overworld who... There are no random encounters. It's all enemies on the overworld who will run at you when they see you, and you do like an attack. And if you attack first, you'll get a bonus, or you'll get to go first or something. If they attack first, then they get to go first, or they have some kind of an advantage when the fight starts, when the turn-based combat begins. Refantazio, I don't know if this is a new thing. I don't know if this was in SMT5. Fantazio has this feature I do really like, which is where essentially you can do a scan with your little fairy companion, and it will outline the enemies. If you don't know what level the enemy is at, they'll be in like a white outline. If they're weaker than you, they'll be blue. If they're around your level, it'll be yellow. And if they're above, it'll be red. So if you encounter a yellow or red or white level enemy, maybe white, I don't know, there might be an exception, then you'll play out the combat, that you'll go into a combat scene, right? However, a blue enemy, someone that you are much stronger than, much higher level than, if you hit them on like the field, they will just die instantly. So you don't have to fight them, which is very nice. So number one, it's satisfying because there'll be a big pack of wolves or something, and then you just pop, and then they all just fall over. You hit them all in a row, and you get all the XP, you get all the bonuses, but you don't have to spend any resources. You're not at risk of taking any damage. You don't have to wait through the whole process of doing a battle. And mind you, the battles aren't terribly long. They'll take maybe 30 seconds for a short one. 20 to 30 seconds. But just not having to deal with that and not having the interruption for enemies that are not really worth your time. It essentially says, these enemies aren't worth your time, so you don't have to really deal with them as long as you have the wherewithal to attack them on the field screen, in the field scene, whatever you want to call it. So I like that a lot. Because historically, RPGs have sort of struggled with like, okay, how do we make battles meaningful or interesting at all levels? There are many solutions to it. You know, in Earthbound, when you're at much higher level, the enemies will just run away from you. Here they choose to just, okay, you can just get the experience immediately and essentially just get a free win over them. I like that. That is I think it's fun. So I like that stuff, you know. I was okay with the combat, and then they really start introducing it to you after like the hour or two mark. They really start introducing the actual system. The more that the game opened up about what it really was, gameplay-wise, the more interested I was in it, until I was like, this is actually a cool system. So in short, it's a very traditional Atlus-style JRPG combat with weak points and elemental rock, paper, scissors and damage types and stuff like that, except it has a Final Fantasy-style job system. So in Metaphor, their equivalent of the jobs are what they call archetypes. Archetypes are things like warrior, mage, healer, fighter. It's, you know, classes or jobs as they would be called in Final Fantasy. And it works much the same way. You have a currency that you can spend to unlock an archetype for a character. Every character's archetypes level individually. So you've got your main character, and you want to level like Seeker, which is the starting archetype. That's like a mix of, it's sort of like an all-rounder of, it's got a little magic and a little healing, and you want to level that one. But if you want to learn Warrior, you got to spend a little bit of I forget what the currency is, but it's this currency that is used exclusively for this that you get from battles. You will usually have more than enough of it, from what I can tell. And then as you earn experience by using that archetype in battle, all of your skills, all your special skills are tied to your archetype. They're based off of what archetype you have equipped. The archetype will gain experience, it'll level up, and then you'll get more abilities and skills for it as you go along. They also include the fact that they tell you that once you max out an archetype, which there's 20 levels, I believe, you get to, I don't know what the process is, but there is some kind of, they call them advanced archetypes, which is, there's like 2 for each of the basic archetypes. There's like 2 that they can split into. I don't know exactly how that works. I don't know if you can unlock both of them or only one, and you have to like make it specific to that, or I don't know. But that is a thing. There is like a post, completion at level up. There's like, that's like the long-term goal for each archetype of maxing it out. Now you get a new one to max out. That's, I guess, even stronger and more specialized typically. So the archetype system, I'm like, okay, so this is kind of cool. I love the job system from Final Fantasy V specifically. I haven't played, so the 3 games that use it, I guess 14 uses it as well, and 11, but let's not count those. Those are like MMOs. It's a little different. 3, 5, and 12. I've played a little bit of 3, but it's like a little too old for me. It's like a little too stiff and a little slow, and I don't know. It didn't like super grab me. I get it. It's not a game I felt like grinding out levels in, which was like I loved doing in 5. Final Fantasy V is great. It is so much fun. The job system is a blast. And so any game that has a form of that, I'm really into, as long as it's relatively well balanced and well designed, and it's not too much of a huge grind. I don't mind grinding. I think grinding can be very relaxing. Just sit down and grind a little bit. But obviously, I have a line. So I enjoyed the archetype system a lot. It leads to these, once you get 3 party members, it leads to 3 party members, and you unlock 6 archetypes in the demo. I counted the ones on the spaces that were there on the archetype selection screen, and there was like 30 something basic archetypes. Maybe the advanced ones are included there as well. I don't know. There's like 30 something, like 36 or 40 archetypes total. Maybe including the advanced ones. I'm not sure. But once you get like 6 under your belt that work relatively uniquely, and you have 3 party members, you can start doing the cool part of having a job system like this, which is party compositions. Yeah! Like straight up. Okay, so like one of my biggest complaints about Final Fantasy VII is that you're limited to only 3 party members. but one of them is always Cloud, so it's more like 2. And for me, I love the aspects of party composition in Final Fantasy 6 and 5. 5, it's all with the same characters switching out their jobs, and 6, you have like 14 different characters that you can mix and match in your party, a party of 4, right? I really like the party composition is some of the most interesting strategic stuff because I really enjoy looking at the things that are on hand that are available to me and thinking what would synergize well, what kinds of strategies can you come up with? And so, you know, I came up at first with a very basic one of, okay, I've got one character is set to be the warrior, which is all like physical damage skills. One of them is a mage who's going to be able to hit like the elemental weaknesses. And one of my characters is a healer who's just self-explanatory. Then I'm like, damn, I'm going through this dungeon, the second dungeon they offer to you at the end of the demo. And I'm running a little low on mana. Mana is kind of hard to come by. Maybe later in the game it will become more plentiful, or it'll be easier to buy mana replenishing items. But at first, at least at the point that I played, which was about, let's say 8 to 10 hours, I took it a little bit slow. Means of replenishing mana are few and far between. It's like you might find an item that does. You might have like three items that replenish your mana. Maybe. Other than that, you have to like go back to your home and rest in between dungeon runs. There is a system of checkpoints so that if you do end up, you're like, I don't have the attrition for this in my party, I can go back to the checkpoint and you can teleport between them in the dungeon, which includes to the very start of the dungeon, and you can go home and your progress is saved. So I was like, I was looking up like, okay, I'm having some troubles with MP conservation. Is there ways that I can more easily get it back or something? And I found someone who's like, oh, so what you can do is you can set 1 or 2 characters to be a fighter. And fighters have these really powerful physical skills, but they don't consume mana, they consume health. So you can set like 2 characters to be a fighter in your party. And this is just for clearing through the dungeon. Not for leveling anything in particular, besides like fighter and healer, I guess. And then set your third character to be a healer and just heal them up when they start getting low. Because the healing magic is very potent. Magic in general and the skills are very strong in this game. Like, you'll do your basic melee attack and it hits for like 22, and then you hit a weakness. You use a spell and hit a weakness, and it's like 200 damage. You're like, oh shit, okay. So that's how it breaks down. Each archetype also adds to your skills, adds to your stats differently depending on which one it is. Obviously, something like the warrior or the knight are going to be increasing your attack, your physical attack, and your health. The mage is going to be increasing your magic and all that. I think the coolest part of the combat system, at least as much as was revealed in the demo, is what they call synthesis. That's what it is. Synthesis abilities are essentially team-up attacks between specific combinations of archetypes. So, for instance, the mage has access to all single-target, like, elemental magics, is what it learns. Maybe it learns multi-target ones later naturally, but if you have another mage or a healer, they'll list like which, what are the other archetypes you'll need in your party to give you access to it. You can go to you can hit synthesis and you'll get a menu of unique team-up abilities. And if you're a mage and you have like a healer in your party, that will give you access to the multi-target versions of those spells, and vice versa for healer. So healer gets access to obviously healing magic, but also light attack magic, like Maha or Hama, whichever one they call it. There's a couple of some of them are the traditional Atlus names, and some of them are like new ones. I think Bufu is still the ice one. Fire one it's like Bot instead of Agi, but whatever. So if you're a mage, if you're a healer and you have a mage in your party, you get access to a team-up attack that's the multi-target light magic spell. So when you're fighting undead who are super vulnerable to light magic, you can just nuke them. You can just nuke the whole thing and like straight up like the last fight that you get to do if you go through the whole dungeon that's available in the demo. Yeah. I just blew through that shit. Because I happen to have like a mage and a healer. And it was great. It's really cool. It consumes both characters' actions. It's the same kind of, if you're used to SMT, I don't think do they show like the actions that you can take per turn in Persona, like Persona 5 at least? I don't remember. I don't know. But they do that in SMT where you'll have a little gauge at the top that shows how many actions each party member is going to get this turn. And this does a very similar SMT Persona style thing of like you hit the weakness and it only consumes essentially that the character who hit the weakness gets another action that turn. It'll go back to them. So if you are just hitting all weaknesses, everyone's going to be able to get to go twice. You're going to essentially double the damage that you deal. Or quadruple, because I think weakness also deals double damage or whatever, something like that. Doing the team of attacks, the synthesis moves, consumes both characters. It consumes both characters' actions for that turn. The trade-off being they're typically really strong, like really, really strong. They're practically like super moves because you're spending most of your turn to use them in most cases. So they better be powerful. It's one of the coolest things. And I think like, man, I just want to get in. I want to level a bunch of archetypes. I want to see all the different synthesis team-up attacks that everyone's got. A lot of them have these really sick custom animations for doing these big super moves. Like it's really big and high impact feeling. You can skip them, which is nice if you get tired of them after like the 50th time seeing it. But it is genuinely a very cool combat system once it opens up and it explains what it's actually about. It doesn't do that for a couple hours. Once you hit the end of the prologue, it does, but not for a couple hours. And honestly, in those first few hours, it was, okay, this feels like a Persona game or an SMT game, but stripped down and barer and way more simple. And I was a little bit on the gameplay end of what I was doing. I was a little bored, but what kept me going through it was the story. It was the plot. Atlus games are well known for having great writing. And I think that this one is going to be no different. I was very engaged in what was going on. The character writing is tremendous. I was very invested in the characters who joined the party. Everyone's either cool or they have something interesting about them, or they have some strong emotion that's pulling me into caring about them. The conflict of the world is fascinating. If the Persona games like aesthetically or setting wise don't appeal to you much, if you like the SMT stuff more, people are calling this fantasy Persona, but I think in terms of tone, it's probably closer to SMT. SMT, Persona is often a lot of like personal, like their stories tend to deal with a lot of like personal issues. Personal, how would I describe it? There's a certain type of philosophy that Persona games tend to cover. SMT games, in my experience, from what I know, are more so concerned the realms of like ethical philosophy and sometimes political philosophy. And metaphor is leaning much heavier into that. This game's about racism and classism. The first shot, the very very first shot, well, besides like after the establishing shot of like the main capital city of the world, or of this country, that you get is in these very nicely animated anime style cutscenes with both English and Japanese voiceovers, which is nice, full support. The first shot is some kind of noble stepping out of like a restaurant and into their carriage, and the owner of the restaurant just hands them a bag of money. Just hands them out of goodwill. And then literally in the same shot, that's in the background, in the foreground, a beggar is being kicked in the face and turned away and called scum. And it's like, okay, all right, you're making a statement about what this world is like. It's a little bit difficult to summarize the premise of the game, because it sort of starts very like putting you straight into the action, and it doesn't hand you a bunch of exposition. Exposition is actually the exposition and the world building is very tastefully sprinkled throughout the game. It comes up naturally as the characters are talking about things. There are a couple moments of, okay, the main character should know what this is, but they're being stupid for the purpose of like, huh? What's that? Like, what are we here to do? And it's like, dude, like, this is like super important. Like, it's your fucking childhood best friend who's gonna like end the race wars that you're doing this for. Did you just forget? That's kind of the premise. It's drip fed. It's drip fed to you in little pieces and fragments of what's going on. But essentially, the bird's eye overview is that this takes place in a fictional country called Euchronia. Euchronia is home to a bunch of different fantasy races. I believe there are like 8 major tribes or races, and some of them are literally second-class citizens. They frequently refer to upper and lower races or tribes. And there is, I haven't seen anything. Actually, yes, I have. You do see. You go into this main city, and one of the first things you see is one of these lower race, a member of one of these lower races, like the dog people, being executed for a crime that he didn't commit, and a crowd cheering it on. And you find out that there are literally like regular political executions of people who belong. Obviously, the justice system and the policing system is corrupt, and they frequently target people. They pin crimes on people who did not commit them, just because it's easier to say that the person of that race did it, and you will not be challenged on that. And not only that, but the execution of these lower races, these more oppressed, marginalized races, is cheered on by a blatantly, proudly racist population of the higher races. So the main character belongs to a race called the Elda, not Warhammer, Eldar, the Elda, which looks just like human beings. They're stand-ins for human beings, essentially. They look like maybe slightly more physically small than some of the other races are. It's not quite sure. I think you're the, as far as I can tell, the main character is the only Elda who's in the story. So I don't really have a comparison point. But the Elda are considered so oppressed and were so persecuted that they essentially left most of society and are basically living isolated in their kind of, you know, like these self-segregated colonies away from the more oppressive races who consider themselves to be above the Elda. Your main motivation is, so first of all, you are a member of this oppressed race. And you face straight up discrimination in story of people will just pick fights with you. They will make comments about you. There's this little thing where as you walk past people, speech bubbles will pop up as you hear the kind of murmur of the crowd or just passersby or, random people on the street. And sometimes people will be going like, oh, why is there an fucking Elda here? Why is there some dirty Elda? You can tell that like guards will be more aggressive when you talk to them. They'll tell you to just like fuck off. They have that kind of a tone to them. There is a clear, like, putting you in the seat of being a race that is discriminated against. The main... As the story opens, the king, who has been kind of... was publicly disavowed the race relations, the negative race relations, but what you find out never really did anything. It was kind of just lip service. He never really put anything into motion or took any concrete steps to make the populace more tolerant or anything, or improve race relations in his country. His son, the prince, was a little boy when an assassination attempt was made on him. Oh, the game opens with this fucking Griffith-looking dude stabbing the king through the chest with a big-ass sword and being like, I am going to take over this country now. It's also really funny because, like, all the other members of they don't even, like, try to hide the fact that everyone thinks he did it. It's just that they can't prove it. His name is Luis. He's the big bad evil villain of the game. This power seeker who's killed the king, and as you find out years ago, tried to kill the prince, tried to get an assassination performed on the prince who was a little boy. The prince survives the assassination attempt, but ends up being cursed. The curse essentially acts like a terminal illness. And in order to protect him, the official story is made that he died in the assassination attempt. He is the only heir to the throne. And so that there are no other attempts on his life, they say that he died, and they essentially ship him off to live in a place where no one would ever give a fuck about, one of these Elda colonies. So he grows up around these people he was kind of told were inferior, ends up learning to be tolerant, and when he gets to be a little bit older, like I think the age of 10, he basically decides that when this curse is finally lifted from him and he can return back to society to reclaim the throne, that his goal, the world that he wants to create a post-racial paradise. His contribution to the country is going to be that he wants to bring all the different tribes together and make people equal and create an equitable society for everyone. Unfortunately, the curse is so strong that he falls into like a 10-year-long coma. And the reason that the protagonist is now setting out on this journey is that you are his childhood friend. And there's a couple very cute flashbacks of them being kids and sharing the dream of racial harmony together. There is this book, this fairy tale, which tells of a world that is essentially like ours, but one, again, where everyone is equal. And this is essentially like a utopic fairy tale that the prince strives for, and that the main character also adopts as that's what your ideal world looks like. That's the vision you want to achieve. So now, essentially, you are given a task. No one can fix this curse. No one knows. None of the most powerful mages, healing mages in the country can possibly hope to help the prince and lift this curse. Apparently, the only way to lift it is to just kill the person who cast it. That being Luis, who I think they say is the guy who cast it. I guess that's how curses work. We have to kill Luis to lift the curse. That's what the goal is. So that's why you're going, and like the initial goal is you got to infiltrate the military, and we're gonna set up this whole assassination thing. So the plot is pretty engaging. Maybe none of those themes interest you, but the way that they sell it is really strong. There is a constant element throughout the demo of the tension between the different races, from the little passing dialogue that you'll get to aspects of the environment. Like they really put a lot of effort into just being able to tell from looking at the world the way that society is organized. You walk into like the seedier parts of town and suddenly it's these lower races. It's like the dogmen and the other, I don't remember all of them. There's like 8 of them, so forgive me. Generally like the elves, like the pointy ear ones, the guys with the horns, those are generally like the upper class races, from what I can tell. I don't know how far the scale goes of like if they have like a strict caste system or something like that, but that's kind of how it goes. There's points where your little fairy companion, who is a very classical Atlus fairy pal, basically tells you like, okay, yeah, we might get a little bit of trouble because you're an Elda walking around in the major city, and those are pretty rare. Like there's more than one character who tells you like, I've never seen an Elda before. People pick fights with you because of your race. Like they seem pretty committed to it as far as the content in the demo goes. Of the racial conflict is a persistent theme. I think if they carry that through to the end, and they capitalize on that and they actually do things with it, I think that can make for a really interesting game. It's not a topic. It's honestly, perhaps I'm ignorant, but I can't think of that many stories that come out of Japan that deal with heavily multiracial settings. There are those, obviously, especially in like the fantasy genre, but racial conflict tends to be that's an American thing. So it's kind of interesting to see it coming from a Japanese developer, and as far as I can tell, the handling of it seems to be pretty good. The characters themselves are really likable. I feel quite a bit for the character like the guy the first friend you make, essentially, this guy named Stroll, this like semi-disgraced nobleman from the countryside, and he's got his own set of ideals. He's got sort of a chip on his shoulder because despite being noble, his people are considered kind of country bumpkins. And they're noble in name only, not really in fortune or land ownership or anything like that. So he's got these ideals of what it means to be a noble. He's really likable. There's this old grizzled veteran that you work with named Grius, who is a cool guy. There is the third main party member, like permanent party member from the looks of it, is you might have seen her. The red-haired German elf lady. What's her name? Harda something Herkenbreak or something like that. Don't get a ton of her. She joins a little late in the demo. But she's cool. I don't know, she's cool. A lot of the character designs are really neat looking. I dig some of the... You'll be walking around and you'll see someone and you're like, that is going to be a plot relevant NPC. Speaking of, this game has a Persona social link system. From what I can tell, the social links, what do they do? I forget exactly. They tell you what it does when you level them up. I think it has something to do with your archetypes. Maybe you have to like max. It might be like you have to max them out before you can get the advanced version of the archetype. Every single social link that you form, much like how in Persona, when you form a social link, you there's like an associated arcana that social link like gives you the track for. You can get more and more powerful personas along that arcana track. In this game, they unlock archetypes for you, and I imagine that, yeah, it helps you level up your archetypes faster. I don't know. I'm not... Oh, wait, they do tell you. It's like, once you hit like level 2 on the social link with that character, you'll get like... Oh, it's something. There are bonuses. I think one of them is, I think like when you max them out, they even tell you that you can do skill inheritance, which I believe in this game means that you can pick like warrior skills and equip them to like your mage, and it'll be shared as long as the character you have like I don't know, you meet a certain level requirement on both, something like that. This game also uses the Persona calendar system, which I'm not sure exactly. There is a time, so you hit a certain point after the prologue is done where there is like a series, there is a time span. They're like, this thing is going to happen over the course of this many months. And there are times of day, and it's like, okay, you have stats. You have stats that you can level up that are like non-combat, much in the same way Persona has like charisma and intelligence and stuff. You have like certain qualities like intelligence, tolerance. There's just a couple others that you can level up by talking to different NPCs in the main city. But that will take up your day. And then at night you have like other time to spend. If you go into a dungeon, that will automatically take up, that takes up a chunk of time, a phase of the day. There is a very cute thing. I'm going to mention it now. It's not really that important. There's a cute play in all of, so the game's days of the week, it only has 5 days. And they are all, the names of the days, they're all fantasy made-up names, but they are based on the Japanese words for the days of the week. So Japanese kanji can have multiple different meanings. And every single one of the ones that is used to represent days also have other meanings, right? So as they are named in the game in English, I don't know how they're named in Japanese, I'd be curious. But in English, so for instance, what they've done is they've taken out Sunday and Monday, and we start on Fire's Day. The Japanese word for Tuesday uses the fire kanji. After that is Water's Day. Wednesday is water in Japanese. Thursday is Arbor's Day. Thursday in Japanese is the tree kanji. Friday is Metals Day, I believe, in metaphor. It's Metals Day. In Japanese, it is the symbol for gold. And Saturday, this one's fun. The last day of the week is called Idol's Day in metaphor. The kanji for Saturday in Japanese is the ground. And you're like, well, how does the ground correlate to idle, to the being idle? And that is because IDLE, not IDOL. That's because in Japanese they have this thing which is they're called radicals. Essentially, what it is you take one kanji and you kind of smush it down. You like shrink it a little bit or make it like narrow or short or something like that, and you combine it with a different symbol. Sometimes it's another kanji. Sometimes it is something that only appears as a radical, and that is like that's a new word. The kanji for taking a rest, like a vacation, for instance, is it's a combination of the symbols for the ground and a person. That is like it's radical. So visually, it's like, a person. The idea is a person laying on the ground. They're taking a break. If you were going to go take your lunch break or something, that would be maybe a kanji that you would use to write that. So ground is like being idle. That's the off day. And if you're curious, Sunday is the symbol for sun. Very, very convenient, I suppose. And Monday is the symbol for the moon. So it's actually really easy to come up with like quick memory tricks to remember the days of the week in Japanese. Monday is Moon's Day. Tuesday is, fire, but that's like kind of an outlier. Wednesday is literally like wetness day because it's water. Thursday is I just think like trees day or something like that. Friday, you get paid on Friday. Get paid on Friday is how I remember it. So it's Gold's Day. Or, yeah, Keen. Saturday is the day of rest. Sunday is the sun. That's the memory trick of using it. It's something I noticed. I brought it up to a friend of mine who also studies Japanese, and we just found it kind of fun and cute. I haven't seen anyone else mention it because it's this very specific like language pun. I just thought I'd talk about it because I don't know, it's cute. Metaphor, the game seems like it's going to be really good, real solid. If you enjoy I would say if you like Atlus combat, this has got you covered. It's got some cool new ideas that they haven't done before. It's not just a rehash. It's taking the basic combat and it's doing something genuinely new with it for their standards. The story is great so far. And it is more, I would say, more serious and a little heavier than some of the Persona games are in terms of cultural commentary. If you were like, okay, yeah, Persona's cool, but it doesn't, the stories aren't like quite as interesting to you, and you like something like SMT, where the later games talk about human society and history and stuff like that. This game is probably more interesting. It's probably a little more on the level that might get you. So I would give, based on the demo. Also, the game's reviewing fantastically, so it seems like it is consistent in keeping that up. So if you need a JRPG to keep you busy for a while, and you want something with a really good script and some pretty cool combat, I would give it to Metaphor. I would say totally check out Metaphor Refantazio or Refantazio. I don't know. Also, if you play the demo, you can carry your save file across to the full game. They tell you that at the start, but I should mention it here. Also, they've mentioned that they are not doing the usual thing that they've done. I think they're changing their strategy. I know that some people have been a little bit burned by Atlus, where Atlus puts out essentially like revision updates to their games like a year after release. They just did SMT5 with Vengeance. They've done it with their last 5 games or something like that. I believe they've said they are not doing that for this. Any content updates will come in the form of an update to the game, to the base game, and not paid DLC. I don't even know if it's paid DLC, or not in the form of a new release. A little bit antiquated. I can't believe we let Pokemon get away with that shit for all the way up till now. Ridiculous. Anyway, Metaphor, good-ass game.